The smell of Sector 4 is specific. It's not just rust and rot. It's a smell of history decomposing. It's a scent of ozone trapped in copper wire for 100 years, released only when my wire cutters snap through the casing. My name is Alara. I'm 17, and I spend my days picking the bones of the world that used to be. The sun was beating down on the scrapyard, a relentless hammer of heat that made the air shimmer above the heaps of twisted metal. I wiped sweat from my forehead, leaving a streak of black grease across my brow. My workshop, if you could call a hollowed-out shipping container a workshop, sat at the base of a mountain of refuse. They call this place the Neo-Pacific Gyre, where the tides of the old world deposited their trash, and where people like me tried to turn it into rent money. "Come on, you piece of junk," I muttered, wrestling with a hydraulic piston on a derelict hoverskiff. It wouldn't budge. I kicked it. It clanged, a hollow, mournful sound that echoed through the canyons of junk. Something shifted in the pile above me. An avalanche of scrap is a death sentence out here, so I scrambled back, my boots slipping on loose gravel. Debris rained down. A refrigerator door, a bundle of fiber optics, and then something heavy. It didn't crash. It thudded with the density of a dying star. Dust billowed up, tasting of iron. When it settled, I saw it. It wasn't a piece of a ship. It was a chest. A torso. Buried in the oxidized orange of the scrap pile was a shape of matte gray, untouched by the rust that claimed everything else. It looked like a sarcophagus made of geometry. I climbed up, my Geiger counter clicking lazily on my belt. It wasn't radioactive, it was cold. So cold it hurt to touch. I brushed away the dirt from what looked like a faceplate. There were no features, just a singular vertical slit in a smooth oval helmet. "What are you?" I whispered. I spent the next 3 days digging him out. I started calling him he immediately, I don't know why, was heavy, dense. His joints were locked, his internal servos silent. I dragged him into my container using a block and tackle system that groaned under the strain. Inside, under the flickering halogen lights, he looked even more out of place. He was 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, built like a linebacker for the apocalypse. But his hands weren't claws or guns. They were articulated, delicate, humanoid. I cracked the chest plate open on the 4th night. I expected a mess of wires. Instead, I found a core that looked like a trapped nebula, a crystalline matrix, dark and dormant. "Okay," I said to the silence of the room. "Let's see if you can wake up." I bypassed the primary ignition, it was fried, and routed power from my workshop's generator directly into his auxiliary port. I used a silver hairpin to bridge the connection on the circuit board, a literal small gear to turn the big one. Sparks showered the floor. The smell of ozone spiked, sharp and electric. The generator screamed, the lights dimmed, and for a second I thought I'd blown the grid for the whole sector. Then a sound, a low, resonant thrum, like a choir humming a single bass note in a cathedral. The vertical slit on his faceplate flickered. It didn't glow red like the security bots in the city. It glowed a soft, piercing cyan. The machine moved. It didn't jerk, it flowed. He sat up, the hydraulics hissing like a sigh. He looked at his hands, turning them over, then looked at me. The light in his visor narrowed, focusing. "Designation," he said. His voice wasn't robotic. It sounded like stones grinding together deep underwater. "Query. Location." "Earth," I stammered, backing up against my workbench. "Sector 4. I'm Alara." He processed this. "Earth. The cradle." He stood up. My roof was too low, he had to hunch. "I am Unit 7 Alpha. Class, Peacekeeper. Status, late." "Late for what?" He looked up, seemingly staring through the corrugated metal roof at the sky beyond. "The silence is over." He was right. The silence ended 2 hours later. It started with the birds. The seagulls that usually swarmed the trash heaps went silent. Then the ground began to vibrate. Not an earthquake, a frequency. It rattled the teeth in my skull. I ran outside. Aegis, that's what I named him because Unit 7 felt rude, followed, moving with a terrifying grace. The sky was usually a bruised purple from the smog. Today, it was tearing open. Massive fissures of red light appeared in the upper atmosphere. Clouds boiled away. Through the tears, shapes emerged. They weren't ships. They looked like obsidian knives, jagged and black, slicing through the air. The Hollows. We'd heard stories of them, myths from before the Dark Age, but nobody believed they were real. They were the cosmic recyclers, stripping worlds of organic matter. Threat detected, Aegis said calmly. Planetary defense grid non-existent. We don't have a defense grid, I yelled over the roaring wind. We have scrap metal and dirt. A dropship, shaped like a severed claw, screamed down from the clouds, slamming into the ridge a mile away. The shockwave knocked me flat. Alara! Aegis was suddenly over me, his metal body shielding me from the debris. Shrapnel pinged off his back, harmless as rain. He offered a hand. Mobility is required. Survival probability decreases by the second. We ran. Or rather, I ran, and Aegis kept pace, scanning the horizon. We needed to get to the settlement, to Old Man Silas. He had the only transmitter powerful enough to reach the orbital stations, if any were left. As we navigated the maze of crushed cars and rusted girders, the first of the ground troops landed. They were nightmares of biomechanics, skeletal frames with pulsing red veins, moving on four limbs like spiders. One dropped in front of us, clicking its mandibles. It raised a weapon arm, glowing with plasma. I froze. I had a wrench in my hand. Useless. Aegis stepped forward. He didn't raise a weapon. He raised his hand, palm open. A shimmering distortion field, a hexagon of hard light, materialized in the air. The plasma bolt hit the shield and dispersed into harmless sparks. Aegis stepped through the shield, grabbed the alien construct by its head, and with a single, efficient motion, crushed it. No anger, just mechanics. Inefficient design, Aegis noted, tossing the wreckage aside. We reached Silas's salvage yard 20 minutes later. The old man was barricaded inside his shop, a shotgun in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other. Kale, a local scavenger with a penchant for reckless flying and bad jokes, was trying to hotwire a transport skiff in the yard. Alara! Kale showed it, his goggles reflecting the burning sky. I thought you were toast, and what the hell is that? He's with me, I said, breathless. Silas peered through the reinforced glass. That's a peacekeeper unit, pre-collapse. Where did you find a goddamn peacekeeper? Trash pile, I said. Open the door. We huddled inside. The transmitter was static. The orbital stations were gone. They aren't just raiding, Aegis said, his voice filling the cramped room. They are terraforming. Atmospheric conversion has begun. Oxygen levels will be critical in 12 hours. So we're dead, Kale said, leaning against the wall. Great. Negative, Aegis said. The command frequency originates from the capital ship in low orbit, the Harbinger. If the central processing core is disrupted, the swarm disengages. Disrupted how? Silas asked. By me, Aegis said. I possess the interface protocols, but I cannot fly. All eyes turned to Kale. He looked at his half-wired skiff, then at the burning sky, then at me. That bucket of bolts can barely make it to the stratosphere, Kale said. It's not a starfighter. It doesn't need to fight, I said, my mind racing, the mechanic in me taking over. It just needs to carry us. I can reinforce the hull with the plating from Aegis' stasis pod. We can boost the thrusters with the high-yield fuel cells Silas has in the basement. We? Kale asked. I fixed him, I said, pointing to Aegis. I'm the only one who can keep him running if he takes damage. I'm going. The modifications took 3 hours. 3 hours of welding, cursing, and praying while the world burned outside. We stripped the skiff, the rusty gull, down to its skeleton and bolted on the ancient alloy plating I'd scavenged. Aegis sat in the cargo hold, hooked into the ship's power supply, charging his core. "You are afraid," he said. It wasn't a question. I was tightening a fuel line. My hands were shaking. Yeah, I've never been to space.
I've never been higher than the top of the trash heap. Space is quiet, Aegis said. You will find it peaceful before the violence begins. Why do you help us? I asked. You're a machine. You could just hide. My programming is to keep the peace, he said. But my heuristic processors, they have evolved. I sat in the dark for 300 years, Ilara. I watched the stars move. I learned that life is rare, and rarity implies value. He looked at me, his cyan eye softening. You are the mechanic. You fix things. I am the shield. I protect things. We are compatible. Ready to burn, Kale shouted from the cockpit. We strapped in. The G-force of the launch was nothing like the simulations. It felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. The roar of the thrusters was deafening, a physical vibration that rattled my bones. Then, suddenly, the roaring stopped. The blue sky faded into a deep, bruising indigo, and then to black. The shaking ceased. My wrench floated up from my lap. I looked out the viewport. Earth was below us, but it wasn't the blue marble from the old pictures. It was scarred. Fires burned in continent-spanning lines. The atmosphere was hazy with smoke, and above it, the enemy fleet hung like a swarm of angry hornets. Stealth systems active, Kale whispered, though there was no need to whisper in space. We're running cold, just drifting debris. We floated through the graveyard of the orbital defense grid. Shattered satellites and frozen bodies drifted past. It was a haunting ballet of destruction. There, Aegis pointed. The Harbinger was massive, a cathedral of black metal, miles long, bristling with cannons. It pulsed with a sickly violet light. How do we get in? I asked. There is a waste disposal port on the ventral hull, Aegis said. It cycles every 4 minutes. We have to time it perfectly. Flying into a trash chute, Kale grunted. Fitting for us. We drifted closer. The scale of the enemy ship was vertigo-inducing. It blocked out the stars. As the port opened, a maw of light in the darkness, Kale slammed the thrusters. The sudden acceleration pinned me back. Lasers strafed the hull. Thump, thump, thump. Shields failing, Kale yelled. Divert power to forward deflectors, I screamed, my fingers flying across the engineering console I'd rigged up. Aegis, integrate with the nav computer. Aegis plugged his hand into the dash. The ship jerked, moving with impossible precision, dodging a barrage of plasma fire. We shot through the closing teeth of the disposal port with inches to spare. We crashed onto a landing deck inside the ship, skidding for hundreds of meters before slamming into a wall. Silence returned. Is everyone alive? Silas's voice crackled over the comms from Earth. We're in, I coughed, unbuckling. Kale? Alive, he groaned. Ship's dead, though. Aegis tore the hatch off. We must move. The core is 10 levels up. The interior of the Harbinger smelled of ammonia and sulfur. The gravity was heavy, oppressive. We fought our way up. This is where I saw what Aegis was truly made of. He wasn't just a shield anymore. He was a whirlwind. When the hollows swarmed us in the corridors, Aegis moved like liquid metal. He used their own momentum against them, tossing them into walls, shielding Kale and me from fire, and unleashing precise bursts of energy from his arm cannon. But he was taking damage. His armor was scarred and pitted. He was leaking hydraulic fluid, a glowing blue liquid that trails behind us. You're hurt, I said during a brief lull in the fighting, trying to patch a rent in his side with quick seal foam. Pain is data, he said. I can function. We reached the central chamber. It was a cavernous hall, dominated by a pulsing violet sphere of energy, the core. Suspended around it were the commanders of the hollows, connected by neural links. I must interface with the core, Aegis said. I must introduce a logical paradox into their hive mind. It will force a reboot of their entire fleet. Cover him! Kale yelled, firing his scavenged rifle at the guards rushing us. I stayed with Aegis. He approached the console. It was too high. He ripped the panel off and found the access port. Alara, he said, pausing. The virus, the paradox, it requires more processing power than I possess. I looked at the core, then at him. What are you saying? I must bypass my safety inhibitors. I must use my own neural net to bridge the connection. It will burn out my cognitive centers. My stomach dropped. You mean you'll die? I will cease to be Aegis. I will return to being Unit 7, a shell. No, I said, tears stinging my eyes. We can find another way. I can hotwire it. There is no time, he said. The blast doors were buckling under the assault of the enemy reinforcements. Small gears, Alara. Sometimes the small gear must break to save the machine. He looked at me one last time. The cyan light in his visor pulsed warmly. It has been an honor to be your companion. He plunged his hand into the data stream.
The room went white. A soundless scream tore through the psychic link of the aliens. The hollows in the room collapsed, their connection severed. Through the viewports, we saw the ships in the fleet drift aimlessly, their lights going dark. They were dead in the water. Aegis fell to his knees. The violet light faded. The cyan light in his eyes flickered, dimmed, and then went out. The escape was a blur. We stole an alien transport, easier to fly now that the hive mind was dead. We landed back at Silas's yard just as the sun was breaking over the horizon. The sky was clearing. The red rifts were gone, sealed shut. The invasion was over. We dragged Aegis's body out of the transport. He was heavy again, just dead weight, just metal. I spent weeks trying to fix him. I replaced the burnt circuits, I polished the armor, I rewrote the code. I got him to turn on. One morning, the vertical slit lit up. Not cyan, just a standard cold white. Unit 7 Alpha online, the voice said. It was smooth, synthetic. The gravel was gone. Awaiting orders. Aegis? I asked. Designation Aegis yacht found in database, the machine replied. I am Unit 7. I sat back, the grease on my hands staining my jeans. I looked at the sunrise reflecting off his pristine faceplate. He was fixed. He was perfect. But he wasn't there. Old man Silas put a hand on my shoulder. He did what he was built to do, kid. He kept the peace. I nodded, wiping a tear that cut through the grime on my cheek. I stood up and patted the cold metal of his arm. Come on, Unit 7, I said softly. We've got a world to rebuild, and I'm going to need a lot of heavy lifting. The machine followed me out into the scrapyard. The world was broken, battered, and full of trash, but for the first time in a long time, it was ours, and even though my friend was gone, the small gears he set in motion were still turning, driving us forward, one rotation at a time.